There's something I've been carrying quietly, patiently, like a truth waiting for the right moment to breathe. And maybe I'm not the best at saying things when they matter most, but this matters. Because sometimes life moves so fast and we forget to stop, to really see what's right in front of us. And what's been in front of me is you. So tonight, I'm not holding back. No overthinking, no fear, just something real, something honest. My love, I need to tell you something. My love, I must tell you something that has been living inside me for longer than I can measure. Something quiet but constant, like a heartbeat you don't notice until you finally listen. It's not loud, not dramatic, not something that demands attention. But it's there in every moment I've spent with you, in every silence we've shared, in every glance that said more than words ever could. I've tried to understand it, to define it, to make sense of why your presence feels like both a question and an answer at the same time. And the truth is, I can't fully explain it, but I can feel it deeply, undeniably, in a way that changes how I see everything around me. There are moments when the world feels heavy, when everything moves too fast and nothing seems to stay still long enough to matter. But then there's you, and suddenly time slows down. Not completely, but just enough for me to breathe. Just enough for me to notice the way you exist in a space like you were always meant to be there. And I find myself watching you. Not in a way that's intrusive, but in a way that feels like I'm trying to understand something rare. Something I don't want to miss. Because you're not just someone in my life. You're someone who changed the way I experience life itself. I didn't expect this. I didn't plan for it. It wasn't something I went looking for or something I thought I needed. But somehow, in the middle of ordinary days and small, almost forgettable moments, you became something unforgettable. And it's strange because nothing about it feels forced. It just happened quietly, naturally, like it was always meant to find me when I stopped trying to control everything and just let things be. There's a kind of honesty in the way I feel about you that I haven't felt before. It's not about perfection, not about idealizing you or pretending everything is flawless. It's about seeing you as you are, the good, the complicated, the parts you show and the parts you keep hidden, and still feeling something steady, something that doesn't run away when things aren't easy. And maybe that's what makes it real, because it's not built on illusions. It's built on something deeper, something that stays even when everything else feels uncertain. Sometimes I wonder if you know the impact you have, not just on me, but on the space around you. The way your presence shifts things, the way conversations feel different when you're part of them, the way silence doesn't feel empty when you're there. It's not something you announce, not something you try to prove. It's just there, quietly shaping everything without asking for attention. And I think that's what makes it so powerful. I've spent time trying to put this into words, trying to find the right way to say it so it doesn't sound like something ordinary, something that could be said to anyone. Because this isn't that. This is specific. This is about you, about the way you exist in my thoughts without effort, the way I find pieces of you in things that have nothing to do with you, the way your voice lingers even after the conversation ends. It's not something I can turn off or step away from, and honestly, I don't want to. There's a vulnerability in saying all of this, in allowing myself to be this open, this unguarded, because once it's said, it's real in a different way. It's no longer something I can keep to myself, something I can control. It becomes something shared, something that exists between us, and that's both terrifying and right, because some things aren't meant to stay hidden. Some things deserve to be spoken, even if the words feel heavy, even if they carry more truth than I'm used to showing. And maybe that's what this is. Truth. Not perfect, not polished, not wrapped in something easy but real. The kind of real that doesn't disappear when things get complicated. The kind that doesn't need constant reassurance to exist. It just is. And it stays. and it grows in ways that don't always make sense, but somehow feel right. Anyway, I don't know where this leads. I don't have a clear picture of what comes next or how everything unfolds from here. But I know this. What I feel for you isn't something temporary. It's not something that fades when things change or when life gets unpredictable. It's something that has already become part of me. Something that shapes how I see you, how I think about you, how I exist in moments when you're near and even when you're not. And I think that's what I needed to tell you. Not in a perfect way, not in a way that answers everything, but in a way that's honest enough to matter. In a way that lets you see what's been there all along, waiting for the moment when I would finally stop holding it back and just let it be seen. There's something about the way you exist in my life that doesn't ask for attention, but somehow holds all of it. It's not something I noticed all at once. It happened slowly, in fragments, in passing moments, in things that didn't seem important at the time. A conversation that stayed with me longer than it should have. A look that felt like it meant more than what was said. The way your presence lingered even after you were gone, like something unfinished but not incomplete. I didn't realize when it started to matter. There wasn't a single moment I could point to and say, that's when everything changed. It was quieter than that, more subtle. Like a shift you don't feel until you try to go back to how things were and realize you can't, because something inside you has already adjusted, already made space for someone you didn't expect to need. And that's what confuses me sometimes, how something so natural can feel so significant, because being with you doesn't feel like effort. It doesn't feel like something I have to figure out or force into place. It just fits. Not perfectly, not without questions, but in a way that makes sense, even when I don't fully understand it, like two pieces that weren't designed for each other, but still connect in a way that feels intentional. There's a certain calm that comes with you, not the kind that removes all chaos or makes everything easy, but the kind that makes the chaos easier to face, the kind that reminds me that not everything has to be solved immediately, that some things can just exist without needing to be controlled. And in a world where everything feels like it's constantly demanding something, that kind of presence is rare. I've noticed how you see things, how you pay attention to details most people ignore, the way you listen, not just to respond, but to understand. And it's subtle, but it matters. It makes conversations feel different, like they have weight. Like they're not just passing time, but actually creating something. And I find myself wanting to stay in those moments longer than I usually would, not because I have to, but because I want to. There's also something honest about you, something unfiltered, not in a loud or obvious way, but in the way you don't pretend to be something you're not. And that kind of honesty, it does something. It makes me want to be just as real, just as open, even when it's uncomfortable. Because when someone shows you that it's okay to exist without masks, it changes the way you see yourself too. I don't think you fully realize how much of an impact you have. Not in a dramatic, world-changing way, but in the quiet ways that actually matter more. The way you shift the energy in a room without trying. The way you make things feel a little less heavy just by being there. The way you create a sense of familiarity even in moments that should feel unfamiliar. And maybe that's why this is so hard to ignore, because it's not based on something temporary. It's not about excitement that fades or moments that lose their meaning over time. It's built on something steady, something that doesn't demand attention but still holds it, something that grows without needing to be forced. I've tried to keep this to myself, to understand it on my own before saying anything out loud. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that some things aren't meant to be figured out in silence. Some things need to be spoken, not because they're fully understood, but because they're real enough to deserve a voice. And this, whatever this is, it's real. Not perfect, not defined, not something I can easily explain, but something I can't ignore anymore. Something that has quietly become part of how I think, how I feel, how I see you in a way that goes beyond what I expected and deeper than what I ever planned for. There are things I've never said out loud, not because they weren't important, but because I didn't know how to carry them into words without losing what they meant. Some feelings don't translate easily. They exist better in silence, in pauses, in the spaces between conversations where everything feels understood without needing explanation. And somehow with you, those spaces feel full instead of empty. I've spent a long time being careful. Careful with what I say. Careful with what I show. Careful not to let too much of what's inside me reach the surface. Not out of fear exactly, but out of habit. Because once you let something real be seen, you don't get to take it back. It exists in a different way after that. It becomes something that can be felt, responded to, changed by someone else. And that kind of openness, it's not something I've given easily. But you change that. Not suddenly, not in a way that felt forced, but gradually in the way you exist, without pressure, without expectation. You never demanded anything from me, never pushed me to be more than I was ready to be. And somehow that made me want to be more anyway. It made me want to show up differently, to be more honest, more present, more real than I've been in a long time. There's something about the way you listen that stays with me. Not just hearing words, but understanding what's behind them. The meaning that doesn't always get said directly. It's rare to feel that kind of attention, that kind of quiet focus where you're not just part of the moment, but actually seen inside it. And when someone sees you like that, it changes things. It makes it harder to hide, harder to pretend, harder to stay distant. I've noticed how you don't rush things. You let moments happen at their own pace. You don't try to control every outcome or force everything into clarity. And that's something I didn't realize I needed. That sense of space, that permission to exist without having everything figured out. Because sometimes the most real things are the ones that don't come with clear answers. And still, despite all of that calm, all of that quiet understanding, there's something undeniable building underneath it. Something that doesn't stay still. Something that keeps moving, growing, expanding in ways I didn't expect. It's not loud, but it's persistent. It shows up in small ways. In the way I think about you at random moments. In the way certain things remind me of you without reason. In the way your presence feels different from anyone else's. I've tried to question it, to analyze it, to break it down into something I can fully understand. But every time I do, it slips past explanation. Because it's not something logical. It's not something that fits into simple definitions or easy conclusions. It's something deeper than that. Something that exists beyond the need to fully understand it. There's also a kind of trust that's grown here. Not the kind that comes from time alone, but the kind that comes from consistency, from the way you show up, from the way your actions match your words without needing to prove anything. And that kind of trust, it's not something I take lightly. It's something I notice, something I hold on to, something that makes everything feel a little more real. I don't think this is something temporary. It doesn't feel like something that fades or disappears when things get complicated. It feels like something that stays even when everything else shifts. And that's what makes it different. That's what makes it hard to ignore, hard to push aside, hard to pretend it's anything less than what it is. And maybe that's what I've been trying to understand this whole time. Not just what I feel, but what it means to actually let myself feel it without holding back. Because there's a difference between recognizing something and allowing it to exist fully. And with you, I'm starting to realize that holding back doesn't make it safer, it just makes it incomplete. So here I am, not with perfect words, not with a clear ending, not with something neatly defined, but with something real, something that has been building quietly, steadily, without asking for permission, something that has become impossible to ignore, impossible to keep contained. something that exists whether I explain it or not, something that has already changed the way I see you, the way I think about you, the way I feel when you're near, and even when you're not. Something that continues to grow in ways I can't fully predict. Something that feels both unfamiliar and somehow exactly right at the same time. Something that carries more meaning than I expected and more truth than I planned to reveal. Something that isn't finished, isn't complete, isn't something I can neatly summarize or simplify. Something that keeps unfolding the more I allow it to exist without resistance. Something that stays even in silence, even in distance, even in the moments where nothing is said and everything is still felt. Something that has become part of me in a way I can't separate. Something that I'm no longer trying to hide. Something that I'm finally letting be seen for what it is, without trying to shape it into something easier. Something that remains steady even when everything else feels uncertain. Something that doesn't ask for guarantees but still feels worth the risk. Something that continues to move forward without needing to know exactly where it leads. Something that is here now, present, undeniable, and real in a way that I can't ignore anymore and don't want to pretend isn't there. And maybe this is the part where everything becomes real in a different way. Not just something felt, not just something understood in silence, but something that stands in front of us, undeniable, asking to be acknowledged. Because there's a point where holding something inside no longer protects it. It just keeps it from becoming what it's meant to be. I've thought about what it means to say all of this, not just the words, but everything that comes with them. Because once something like this is spoken, it changes things. It shifts the space between two people. It creates a new kind of honesty that can't be taken back or reshaped into something smaller. And that kind of shift, it's not easy to step into. It requires something real, something steady enough to stand on its own without needing guarantees. But when I look at you, when I really see you, not just who you are on the surface, but the way you exist in the world, the way you carry yourself through moments both simple and complicated, I realize that this isn't something I want to keep questioning from a distance. It's not something I want to overthink until it loses its meaning, because some things don't need perfect clarity to be true. They just need the courage to be spoken. There's a certain kind of fear in being this open, not loud fear, not something obvious, but something quieter, the kind that asks what happens next, the kind that wonders how things will change once everything is out in the open. Because when you care about something this much, you can't pretend it doesn't matter how it's received. You can't act like the outcome doesn't affect you. And maybe that's what makes this so significant. Not just the feeling itself, but the willingness to stand in it without knowing exactly what comes after. But at the same time, there's something stronger than that uncertainty, something that doesn't disappear just because the future isn't clear. It's the same thing that's been there from the beginning, steady, quiet, constant, the same thing that made me notice you in a way that went beyond ordinary attention, the same thing that kept growing even when I wasn't trying to feed it or define it. And I think that's what matters most, that this isn't built on something fragile. It's not dependent on perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It exists because it exists. Because something real doesn't need to be forced into place to prove itself. It shows up, it stays, it becomes part of everything without asking permission. I've realized that what I feel for you isn't about needing something from you. It's not about filling a gap or completing something that was missing. It's about recognizing something that already feels whole, something that adds meaning without taking anything away. And that kind of feeling, it doesn't come from dependency. It comes from connection, a connection that stands on its own, even when nothing else is certain. There's also something I've come to understand about time, that not everything has to be rushed. Not everything has to be decided immediately. Some things need space to unfold, to grow naturally without being pushed into conclusions before they're ready. And what I feel for you, it deserves that space. Not because it's fragile, but because it's real enough to exist without being forced into shape. Still, even with all of that patience, all of that understanding, there comes a moment where silence isn't enough anymore, where feeling something deeply isn't the same as sharing it, where keeping something inside starts to feel like holding it back instead of protecting it. And this is that moment for me. I'm not standing here with a perfect plan or a clear expectation of what happens next. I'm not trying to define everything or put it into something structured and predictable. What I have is simpler than that, but also heavier in its own way. It's honesty. It's the decision to stop holding back what's been there all along and to let it exist outside of my own thoughts. Because the truth is, what I feel for you has already changed me in ways I didn't expect. It's shifted how I see things, how I approach moments, how I understand connection itself. And that kind of change doesn't happen without meaning. It doesn't happen without something real behind it. So this isn't just about saying something. It's about allowing something to be fully seen for the first time. It's about stepping out of the quiet and into something more open, something that carries risk but also carries truth. It's about choosing not to hide behind uncertainty or wait for a perfect moment that may never come. It's about you and the way you've become part of my life in a way that doesn't feel temporary, in a way that doesn't feel accidental, in a way that continues to grow even when I'm not trying to control it, in a way that stays present in my thoughts without effort, in a way that has shifted how I understand what it means to care about someone beyond surface-level moments, in a way that has created something steady and undeniable that doesn't need constant reassurance to exist, in a way that feels both new and familiar at the same time, in a way that doesn't rely on perfect conditions to remain real, in a way that continues to unfold without needing to be forced into conclusions, in a way that holds meaning even in silence, even in uncertainty, even in moments where nothing is clearly defined but everything is still felt, in a way that has become part of how I experience the world around me, in a way that I can no longer keep contained within myself, in a way that deserves to be spoken. Not because I have all the answers, but because what I feel is real enough to stand on its own without needing anything more than honesty. And after everything I've said, everything I've tried to put into words, even knowing that words can never fully hold what I feel, there's still one truth that remains simple and unfiltered, something that doesn't need explanation to be real. My love, I must tell you, not because it's the perfect moment, not because everything is certain, but because what I feel has reached a point where silence would mean hiding something that deserves to be seen. And I don't want to hide this anymore. I don't want to pretend it's smaller than it is, or something I can just keep to myself like it doesn't matter. Because it does matter. You matter in ways that I didn't expect, in ways that I didn't plan for, in ways that continue to reveal themselves the more I allow myself to be honest about it. And it's not about needing you to respond in a certain way or to give me something back in return. It's not about conditions or expectations or outcomes that have to be a certain way for this to feel valid. It's about truth. The kind that exists, whether it's spoken or not, but becomes stronger, clearer, more real the moment it is. I've reached a point where I understand that keeping something like this inside doesn't protect me. It just keeps me from living it fully. And maybe that's what this is really about. Not just telling you how I feel, but allowing myself to stand in it completely without hesitation, without holding back parts of it out of fear of what might happen next. Because whatever happens next, this moment still matters. This truth still matters. And what I feel for you, it's not something passing, not something temporary, not something that fades when things get uncertain or complicated. It's something steady, something that has grown without needing to be forced, something that has become part of me in a way that I can't ignore and don't want to.